Hello and welcome back to Closely Observed English. And here we have another writing feedback video. This time this is C2 Advanced and we are looking at a report. So let's dive right in. The rubric is over here. So let's run through it very quickly before we turn our attention to the text itself. So your company recently sent you on a training course. Your line manager wants to know if the course is suitable for other employees and has asked you to write a report. In the report, you should describe the course, give your opinion of the course, and say whether you would recommend the course or not, and explain why. Okay, so in we go. The report begins. It is the aim of this report to outline the characteristics of the stroke breakdown swimming course, which I have attended recently, showing my honest point of view about the content and its deliverance, to consider the possibility of other swimming teachers taking part in the course when it takes place next time. Okay, course descriptions, first heading. During the 4 days the course lasted, the 4 competitive strokes were covered from a similar approach, focusing on coaching young swimmers from the ages of 10 to 12. Each day was devoted to a different stroke, which were covered during the morning sessions, analysing its mechanics, whereas coaching strategies were delivered hand in hand with real practices in the afternoon session. All participants were rewarded with a certificate in coaching high stages at the end of the course. Personal opinion. For me personally, I have found the course extremely effective and practical, being mostly beneficial in increasing my overall knowledge regarding the different swimming strokes, particularly on the butterfly modality. Additionally, we had the opportunity to put into action the content that had been covered during the lessons that was determinant in increasing my experience and confidence when teaching. If I am to say something negative about the course, is that most of the swimmers were over the age of 12. Recommendation. I do believe that it would be highly recommendable to book some of my co-workers in the course, as not only would they increase their theoretical knowledge, but also applied it in real practices. All right, so let's start by looking at content, shall we? Interesting. So the original rubric says your company recently sent you on a training course, and your line manager wants to know if the course is suitable for other employees. Okay, so I was somewhat surprised when I saw that the report was on a swimming course and that this is written by what is effectively a swimming teacher. Um, hmm, does that fit the rubric? Well, I suppose you could argue that it does, because the company would be a school or educational institute, and your line manager could be like a director of studies or something like that. But if you want to play it safe, it would probably be best for this to be, I don't know, a training course on the use of some software, perhaps, or methods in accountancy, something a little bit closer to the world of business, which I think is what it's aiming for. But we'll give the candidate the benefit of the doubt and we'll say that that's okay. So, in terms of the content, then we need a description of the course, and that comes very clearly just there. We need the opinion of the course, and I think that's pretty reasonably made here. And then the recommendation, I would say, comes through just here. I felt that the description is full and it goes into quite some detail as to what the course actually covers, but the personal opinion part takes a lot of words to describe a couple of things that are opinion based, but perhaps doesn't really go into enough detail. So the target reader is not going to be fully informed there. And because the candidate has kind of run out of words, the recommendation itself is a little bit short. The explanation of why is okay, but again, I don't think that the target reader would be fully informed. If the target reader were fully informed, we'd be looking at a 5. So I'm going to go for a band 4. So I think that restructuring some of this text would help lift it up to a 5, giving a bit more detail, a bit more justification would be good. Looking at communicative achievement then, for a band 3, we want to see evidence that the conventions of the communicative task are used effectively. Well, the first convention that we can see is that this is structured as a report should be structured with an introduction, establishing the context, and then each of the content points needs to be addressed through the use of subheadings, and we have those here, so that's great. The register, another convention of the report here, is consistently formal, so I think that that's good. Arguments made in support of the writer's ideas are generally convincing and expand past the kind of introductory phase, but not as far as perhaps they need to go. So I think that we're definitely looking at least a 3 and probably a band 4 for that. Now, in terms of organization at the level of the text itself, this is good. We can see that each point is dealt with in its own paragraph, and so the text itself is organized well and it is coherent. We have subtle cohesive devices in many places. So, for example, in the course description, the first sentence introduces the idea of there being 4 days in the course. The next sentence says each day was devoted, and that's a good linking device, actually. Under the personal opinion, we have slightly more explicit cohesive devices. So we have the additionally that appears just there. The structure is good here because we have positive evaluations followed by something negative, and that's it. It's not positive, negative, positive, or something like that, which would be a weakness of organization. It's a bit stronger there. So I would say that the organization is pretty good. So again, we'd be looking at a 4. Okay, so that then takes us on to the language point, which if you've been watching these videos, it's often the language point that's the most complicated to assess, but also the area where students struggle the most, let's say. There are some words that immediately leapt out at me as being incorrect for the context, or just the choice of word wasn't quite right. Let me have a look. There are a few little slips, mechanics here and knowledge here. I think that that's a typing problem. The students obviously like this. The words have come along. They know what they mean. It's just little. There's a slip. It doesn't really count. Let's have a look. There was this was possibly a slip, but it could also be interference because there's it should actually be past simple rather than present perfect. So I found the course. It sounds like we've gone found, but then because it's irregular, he's made it regular by putting the ed ending. Butterfly modality. I'm not very good at swimming terminology. I know the butterfly stroke. I think here the writer is trying to avoid repeating the word stroke, which has already appeared once just here. We could have just gotten rid of modality. That would have helped. That was determinant, or I would say that determined the increase in my experience, or that needs to be a little bit reworded perhaps. And then we've got the problem of pluralizing the word practice. I think it was at least, was it twice? Oh, there was one here. I think it was in this first, the first content paragraph. Real practices. So practice itself is uncountable in this context, so we have to be a little bit more careful of that. In terms of the effect overall with the language, I think that there are a couple of issues of collocations and word choice generally. I would say that most of it is appropriate, so that's okay. The grammatical forms were generally used well. The occasional errors that were present were not really problematic as such. There's a lot of positive stuff here, and everything that needs to be here is pretty much here. There are some areas where it could have been reworded. Forgot about this deliverance. It should be delivery. It's a slight difference. If you need help on the word deliverance, check out the film of the same name if you're over 18. Maybe not otherwise. So where should we go with the language? I would say that it's probably a 3 or thereabouts. Okay, so overall, we have a pretty reasonable piece of writing here. It satisfies the majority of the content requirements of the task. The language is generally well controlled. There are good aspects to the communicative achievement and the organization. So there's a lot here for the student to build on, to take their writing further, and I think that they can be pretty pleased with their efforts. One thing that they've done that makes it a little bit harder for themselves is to go in an unusual direction with the content. They've decided that instead of, imagining somebody who works in an office and who has a line manager going on a course, they've gone for some sort of academic person. Some of the details are a little bit odd. The specificity of who the target students would be, these ideas of people who are between 10 and 12 years old, and then a negative of the course is that most of the swimmers on the course that you got to practice with were over the age of 12. It seems to be trying to stretch the idea a little bit beyond breaking point. So my advice there would be to keep it simple if you can. Of course, if you have no experience of life in an office, it's a little bit difficult. If you have experience of swimming, it makes a lot of sense to go for this sort of thing, swimming instead. But I suppose there is a place that you could meet in the middle. You could have somebody who, I don't know, works in an office taking care of different swimming pools in the city. Maybe the line manager wanted you to go on, I don't know, a training course for safety issues in swimming pools. So you could still turn that kind of office-based thing to your favor. But otherwise, I think that the student doesn't have very much to worry about. And yeah, I think so. There's a text here that is full of positives. So good work. And on that, thank you. And I shall see you next time.